If you look at the back of a 777, you'll notice that the tail kind of forms what looks like a pinched off area, and that's where the auxiliary power unit is, and only 777 has that. I've been a pilot since the age of 16, and there's been times, during law school and while I was in the Air Force. I was not a pilot in the Air Force. I was a Judge Advocate General in the Air Force.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you for the opportunity to serve. Don't beep it up. And I'm looking at him like, what are you talking about? He gets out and slams the door shut. And I'm like, okay, what just happened? And then he looks at me and goes like this. And it's like, okay, I guess I'm going to solo.
Now, what was tougher, passing the bar or becoming a pilot?
Oh, I'm going to tell you that passing the bar was way harder because the thing about flying is that it's fun. And when you take something like the bar exam, that's not necessarily fun.
Welcome to another edition of the Spotting Chronicles. I already did an introduction to this, but one day I was at In-N-Out spotting, as I usually do, and it was getting a little bit dark. So I decided I wanted to head on over to Imperial Hill and check it out, see what's going on over there. Because I'm trying to do a little bit more night spotting. So I walk up and I see something at the time in my mind. I say, oh, that's odd. I see a guy with his phone like this and he's just standing up talking. People spot with their phones all the time at Imperial Hill, but I had never seen someone just standing there like that. And it just looked odd to me. So I started spotting and I started listening. And so quickly my thought went from, oh, that's odd to, oh, that's interesting. And so I just kept spotting. And I'd been getting useful shots. I was just sitting there shooting. I was waiting for this guy to finish because I wanted to follow him on his social. That's all I wanted because it was just that interesting. And so when he finished, he was making a quick exit. As I found out, he's a busy guy. So he was making a quick exit, and I stopped him and said, oh, can I follow you on social? And he was gracious enough to let me follow him on social. He followed me back. We talked a little bit about Las Vegas spotting, because that's where he's from, Las Vegas, and the scene around there and who spots there and just how things go at Las Vegas spotting. And so that was it, the end of it, I thought. So that was the weekend. I think it was Sunday. It was
between Christmas and New Year's, yeah.
Yes, it was just before the New Year. So I came back on New Year's. I met some spotters. I stayed at the H Hotel for New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, and I met some spotters from DFW. And so I always try to be gracious to spotters that come to LAX and show them around. And turns out someone was gracious to me. So I came back on the first. He walked in, lo and behold, he walks up. He remembered my name. That's a skill, to remember people's names. He remembered my name. Hey, Greg, how you doing? We talked a little bit more, and he gave me an open invitation to come to Las Vegas and spot with him. He would take me up in his plane. Who does that? It was so gracious, and I really appreciated that. And today is that day. We went flying. We've already flown, and I'm going to show you all of that footage. And I met this interesting guy. His name is Jeff Lustick. His Instagram is Blackhawk 9 AI. Now you've got
it's Hawk Pilot.
Hawk
9
Pilot
AL.
9
Hawk
A.
Pilot 9
Is it
AL.
is AL? I thought it was AI because
AL.
this guy is a walking AI. That's why I thought it was AI. So explain your handle.
So this is my Cessna 182, but my other airplane, which is really my pride and joy, is a Piper Tomahawk, a PA-38. So that's how the name comes, Hawk Pilot. And then the last three digits of the call sign are Niner Alpha Lima. So Hawk Pilot 9AL.
Got it.
And I'd rather be an AI than an AH. So
Look, I wanted it to be AI so bad because this guy is a walking AI. He's an attorney. He's a former judge. He sells planes. He's a plane broker. He does so much. And most of all, what's so fascinating about him, he knows aviation up and down. Because see, when he was on Imperial Hill that day, he was describing every plane. He was telling you how you can tell a 999 by the tail. So how can you tell a 999 by the tail?
Well,
I'm sorry, 777.
The 777. See, the thing of it is, when I was younger, when we were both younger, you had 727s, and they were very characteristic. They had a T-tail. They had 3 engines on the back. We had DC-10s and L-1011s, and they had 2 engines on the wing and 1 on the tail. We had 707s with 4 engines but small fuselage. We had the 747 with 4 engines and the bump on the top. And all those planes look different. You would never mistake a 727 for even a 747. But now, because Airbus and Boeing have gone to just the two engines, at a distance, it's really hard to tell the difference between an Airbus 319 or an Airbus 320 or even a 757 and an Airbus 321. When it comes to the 777, though, they have a pinched tail. If you look at the back of a 777, you'll notice that the tail kind of forms what looks like a pinched off area, and that's where the auxiliary power unit is, and only 777 has that. So that's what I was telling you about. That's how you can tell the difference between those two engine jets from a distance. They look a lot alike, and it's really hard to tell them apart.
See, and that's where I want to improve my spotting, because I can't tell from a distance like he can tell, because I don't present myself as anything other than an enthusiast. Because you will get exposed very quickly in aviation if you try to present yourself as something else. Because when I first came back to spotting, I was posting my old photos till I got new photos, and I posted an old photo of a Lufthansa 747, the Yankee Tango, and somebody said, "When was that photo taken?" So people can tell. And so how long have you been flying as a pilot?
So I've been a pilot since the age of 16, and there's been times, during law school and while I was in the Air Force. I was not a pilot in the Air Force. I was a Judge Advocate General in the Air Force.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you for the opportunity to serve. But I've been a pilot since I was 16, and things have changed so much in that time. Just the technology, just the way we fly, the things we do when we fly. When I first started flying, no one had headphones. We used the boom mic, and we listened to the cabin speaker, and we would fly with one hand, and we had the boom mic in the other, and then we'd set it down in the console and control the throttle. Only the rich guys had headsets when I was a kid. And then the technology got cheaper, and they started installing headset gear in airplanes. Now everybody has headsets. The other thing is, when I first started flying, we didn't have GPS. We used paper maps, and we would keep our finger on the map, and we would mark up the map with a pencil. We'd go through so many maps because they were cheap then, and that's what we all used. Now we have a visual representation of the Earth on our screen, and on that screen we can see the roadways we're flying over. We can see the airports we're near. We can also see the other traffic, and we can tell where that traffic is, how high above us or below us they are, and just the information overload that's come into the cockpits. And this is not a big airplane, but this airplane has much more technology than those 747s and 707s ever did. So it's just mind-boggling to see the changes over the years in what we do and what the big major airlines do as well. The tremendous airplanes that they have, and that's why they can get by with two engines. Those two engines are super efficient. They produce more thrust on less gas and less noise than ever before. So I'm fortunate. My grandmother, she lived to be 100 years old, and in her lifetime they went from no airplanes all the way to, and she flew in once across the country on a 747. I always thought that was weird. But in my lifetime, we've gone from this analog, antiquated technology to just a tremendous, almost an overloading amount of technology in our cockpits at all levels.
I can remember the moment that I wanted to start plane spotting. What was that moment when you decided you wanted to be a pilot?
Well, it really wasn't anything that anyone in my family had done. And when I started flight training, I was a Civil Air Patrol cadet, and that's really what got me into it. I was kind of a delinquent youth, my brother and I got interested with a friend, and we joined the Civil Air Patrol, and I became a Civil Air Patrol cadet. And that has a program of aerospace education and youth leadership, and it's surrounding aerospace and pilots. And there was always something about flying that I thought would be interesting, but I always felt it would be too difficult to achieve. But I had in the summer of my 15th year, when I was 15 years old, I went to a flight encampment. And at this flight encampment, they give you training so you can pass your ground school. I think I was already 16. And then in 10 hours of flight training, I soloed. And it's such a tremendous feeling because I was in a Cessna 150. My flight instructor was this crusty old Army dentist. He was an Army officer, and he was just like, he didn't talk to you, he barked at you. And I remember we were about 10 hours of flight training. It was at the Winslow Airport, right by Mount St. Helens in Washington State. And we get to the end of the runway, and he goes, "All right, don't beep it up." And I'm looking at him like, "What are you talking about?" He gets out and slams the door shut. And I'm like, "Okay, what just happened?" And then he looks at me and goes like this. And it's like, okay, I guess I'm going to solo. So I went and I soloed. And I'll tell you one thing that all pilots, when they do their first solo, realize is that airplane flies a lot better with that fat ass flight instructor out of there. I can tell you, because these airplanes are so weight sensitive, and the amount of horsepower we have is fixed, and when you're carrying two bodies versus one, it just gives such a tremendous feeling. And anybody who's ever done it out there, that's done their first solo, that sense of excitement, because now you are actually responsible. There's no flight instructor to bail you out, but the airplane weighs 160 pounds lighter, and suddenly you're just getting so much more performance. It is a real euphoria. It is the best high that you'll ever feel.
I'm smiling so much because I wanted to ask you that question. What was the first time like? Now, what was tougher, passing the bar or becoming a pilot?
Oh, I'm going to tell you that passing the bar was way harder, because the thing about flying is that it's fun. And when you take something like the bar exam, that's not necessarily fun. But you can become a pilot. Anybody can become a pilot. Anyone who wants to can become a pilot. The thing about flying for me, and I think some people might have different experiences, for me it's about touch, feel, muscle memory, staying current on the way the airplane feels. I have to tell myself, look at the instruments, because I'm so used to listening to the airplane. Like we were flying today and we got hit by wake turbulence. And I said to you, could you hear it? And you said, I didn't notice that. Mm-hmm. But I noticed that thing. I noticed how the airplane whistles. I noticed how it sounds when it's going through the air. I noticed how it behaves. And so I'm a real stick and rudder guy. So for me, passing the check ride, it's intimidating, because you're going up with a designated pilot examiner. And back in my days, there were no designated pilot examiners. You went up with an FAA inspector. You were with the man. You were with the government. and it's about 2.5 hours of oral presentation where they'll ask you everything under the sun. They'll point to the chart and say, what's this mean? And they'll pull out the rule book and the federal air regs. What's this? And you got to know everything. It's just like a murder board for 2 hours. And then you go flying, and then you actually go flying. And if you make any mistakes, you're done. Wow. You fail. Wow. So it's about a 4-hour, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. But for me, the check ride was more about just mastering the way it feels, the way it flies, because I'm a very stick and rudder kind of pilot. Not every pilot's like that. Some pilots will fly an airplane, they don't notice anything different about it. I can tell in this airplane when we've got some monofilament on the spark plugs. I can tell when the wheels need to be greased, when they need to, be packed, the bearings and whatnot. So I'm a real feel-it pilot. And so for me, the check ride was a better experience than I think a lot of people might. For me, it was easier than the bar exam.
But I can imagine that's a great combination, having that touch and feel, but also knowing your instruments as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, exactly. And you do have to know your instruments. And there's different levels of flight training. There's the private pilot, which is kind of the basic journeyman, the entry level. Then you can move up to your instrument. Then you can get your commercial. You can also get your certified flight instructor. And then you move up to what's called airline transport pilot. And not everybody achieves those levels, because it is difficult. At the different levels, there's also multi-engine and multi-instructor and instrument instructor and ground instructor. There's testing that you do. There's written testing that the FAA provides. And some people aren't very good at testing, and I'm not good at testing. But there's just different professional levels that you move up in. And I know people that are great at testing, and man, they're taking tests all day long, all week long, and passing them. So for me, it's all about the feel. I'm more of a kind of a sensitive pilot when it comes to that.
Now, I was scared crapless to do this. I was so nervous about it, but I could not pass up the opportunity as a plane spotter when someone was so gracious enough to offer this. I had to put that fear aside and do this. Now, you say you take up children and other people who are afraid of flying. So how long have you been doing that? What's that all about?
So I think that is something that a lot of pilots do, is they'll invite people to come flying with them. And I guess I've kind of, since COVID, I haven't done it as much. But there is also a program called the Experimental Aircraft Association Young Eagles program. And they have a cadre of pilots, and they have a program they provide pilots insurance, and they also do background checks on pilots. And they'll hold what are called rallies. And they'll publicize it, and they'll say to the parents, bring your kid for a free flight. And we'll take like 3 youths up flying, and it's like for a half an hour or 45 minutes. I used to do that a lot. And I also have taken Civil Air Patrol cadets up flying as well in orientation flights. But I do like to take people that have never been flying like yourself, because like you were telling me that you were going to be really nervous and anxious about it. But the truth is that there's really nothing to be afraid of. And I've had people that have extreme fear of heights, and then they get in the airplane and they don't even notice that they're up high. So flying is a uniquely different experience. It hits the senses and the body sensations differently than standing and looking down on a 20th floor building, or trying to walk across something that's high up, and even on a roller coaster. I've had people that are scared to death of roller coaster rides, but they have no problem flying in one of these.
And I can testify to that. You and I were on the 20th floor recently, and I was more nervous there than I was in your plane. You were definitely right about that.
Exactly. So that's a big difference, and I can't explain why the human body works that way, but it just does, and that's been my experience over the years.
So what did you do in the military?
I was a judge advocate general, so I was basically a uniformed officer. I was a commissioned officer in the Air Force, and I did courts martials. I was a prosecutor and a defender in the courtroom, like the movie A Few Good Men. That's basically what I did, but in the Air Force.
One of my favorite movies.
One of the best.
One of the best scenes ever. I just love that movie.
They actually used that movie at the JAG school. That and My Cousin Vinny are the two top movies that they use at the JAG school. Not kidding you.
Oh my God!
Not kidding
you bring it up two of my favorite movies. My Cousin Vinny, when she's on the porch and my clock is ticking. Oh, I love that movie. Utes.
Are you two related? She's my fiance. Certainly explains the hostility.
Oh, I love that. Look.
That's why I like hanging out with you, because I could drop Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and that. I can give you Top Gun quotes, and that.
Yes.
Sorry, some of you young spotters out there, you can't keep up with us when it comes to that.
Look, lately I don't know what it is, but lately when I've been meeting spotters, and at the end of the day, it's like we're old friends. Aviation is just like it's a universe. Somebody told me they're from Switzerland, I believe. They wanted to come, and they were warning me, well, my English is not that good. And I said to them, aviation is a universal language.
So here's what you're learning, okay? And this is something I've known as a pilot for a long time. As a plane spotter, you're welcomed in the aviation community. The aviation community right here at this airport, we have individuals out here that, at a moment's notice, I'm going to take care of that person. It's kind of a brotherhood or a sisterhood. It's a cadre. When you go up in these airplanes, when you cross those limits, when you put yourself out there in an airplane, it kind of transforms your personality. It kind of transforms your life. And instantaneously, if I know you're a pilot and you know I'm a pilot, we kind of know what we go through. We kind of know what we're dealing with. We unfortunately had a pilot that disappeared from this airport. And as it turns out, he did pass away. He did crash. But for that entire week that he was gone, people at this airport were getting into their airplanes, and we were searching for him. That's what we do as aviators. And I think when you come in as a plane spotter, you're kind of picking up on that energy, I think, and you're seeing how we are, because we are a select few that get to see the Earth from a different perspective. And when you see the Earth from a different perspective and you understand what can happen and what you need to do to make it safe, it just gives you a different way of looking at things. When I was in the Air Force, I had officers that didn't have children. They were my leaders, my commanders. The officers that had children always had a different perspective.
Of course.
The guy that didn't have children, he'd work till 8 o'clock at night, and so we had to stay till 8 o'clock at night. The guy that had children would walk around and say, hey, what are you working on? It's 4:30, go home. And it's kind of that way with aviators. So I think as you come into the aviation community, especially as a plane spotter, you're going to be very welcomed. And you're going to see that we're a very friendly group of people. I would say that we're risk takers, but we're not crazy risk takers, because what we do is very safety aware. It's highly regulated. It's highly trained. And if there's anything that is a no-go, we're not going. We're making sure. And you saw me today walking around the airplane doing safety checks. And even as we were flying, I was telling you things like, oh, wait a minute, I don't know about that. And let's do it this way and let's do it that way. Because we're always thinking ahead about safety. And I think that's just the kind of caliber of person that you're going to come into in the aviation circle. And I have traveled the United States with buying and selling airplanes. And whether I'm in Kansas or New York or California or Texas, I'm always meeting, like you're meeting, the same kind of people. And it's the same internationally, too, with plane spotting.
Talk a little bit about that, the fact that you're a plane broker. How did you get into that, and how does it work?
Well, I buy and sell airplanes, and I'm a licensed broker. And you just get into it, I think, the way anyone gets into selling like real estate, or there's no professional certification and there's no required professional license, but you have to have the right combination of legal knowledge as well as technical knowledge and pilot skills, because I don't think you can really successfully sell airplanes without flying them. And I know people that do it, but it makes it a little easier when you're a pilot. And it was just something I started my company, Tomahawk Aero Services, about 12 years ago. And it was really born out of the fact that I love airplanes. And I would rather be sitting in a hangar in Minnesota than in a courtroom in Los Angeles. And so that's really what it's borne out. But, the last 4 years have been really hard on aviation. Interest rates have gone up. Supply chain problems have prevented us from buying parts to fix our airplanes. Insurance rates have skyrocketed. And people aren't willing to sell their airplanes and buy something new. So we are experiencing, I would say we're experiencing a recession when it comes to the used airplane market. And there's a few things that might change that. The new administration that might get the economy moving, might get interest rates going down. But the last 4 years have been pretty tough. It's been hard to buy and sell an airplane, but I'm optimistic about the future. But I really enjoy buying and selling airplanes, but right now it doesn't pay the bills. I got to do other things.
Is there a particular plane on your bucket list right now?
Well, I would say there's only one airplane that I really would love to have other than this one, and that's the Cessna TTX. And that's a completely different airplane. It's low wing. It looks like a Ferrari or, like a Porsche or something, because it's got all these curved lines. And instead of like the rivets that you see on this airplane, it's made out of like a fiberglass, carbon fiber, and it flies really fast, over 200 knots. And so I look at that airplane and I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the bucket list airplane. But the truth is, it's just hard to get away from the Cessna 182 because it does so much, it carries so much. And even though it's a little bit slower, it's always faster than I plan. It's always, like for right here, if I was to fly to LA and see you, I would be there before you because you're driving. Yes. But it would take me about 1 hour and 50 minutes. If the winds were good, I'd be in Los Angeles in 1 hour and 50 minutes. If I flew commercially, if you add up the time it takes to go through the terminal, wait to board, wait to taxi, take off, land, taxi, get off, and then get to the terminal, I'm going to be there before you if you fly commercial from Las Vegas. So even though this airplane is a little slower, I can't justify getting rid of this. And every time I think about selling it, I realize I can't replace it. So I doubt I'll ever get that TTX, but it's still nice to admire them and still nice to dream about having one.
What makes a good judge?
What makes a good judge? Well, that's certainly off topic, but I'll entertain it. I think what makes a good judge is someone who's extremely down to earth. Because sometimes judges who sit above everyone in the courtroom, who everyone stands for and calls sir or your honor, and if you don't, you go to jail. I think that judges lose touch with basic human beings and understanding what people go through and the struggles that they go through. So I think a good judge is someone that is down to earth and personable and willing to understand what each person individually is going through at the time when you meet them.
I asked that question because I'm just as fascinated by the fact that you were judged as I am by your aviation knowledge. So it was there. I didn't want to lose that. We got Jackson over here.
We need to get Jackson in the picture. Let me go get Jackson in the picture. Because if you follow my plane spotting, you know Jackson because he's always in. Is he in the picture? Hopefully, yep. So Jackson's always with me. Jackson is the ultimate airport dog. He goes flying. He loves to go flying. He gets excited about it. And whenever I go around the country, he's a registered service dog, so he actually will be able to sit with me in the cabin. And he is the most personable, easygoing, laid-back dog you've ever seen. I think it's been like a week since he's barked. He doesn't ever really bark or anything. But
what's that training process to be a service dog?
Well, Ira was just here. He's the service dog trainer. It's a series of levels that the dogs go through to learn comportment and association and commands and responses. And then he's trained to respond medically. If I have some kind of a medical problem, he'll try to revive me. And if that doesn't work, he'll let you know. So he's always paying attention to me. He's always, although not right now, I think he wants that donut over there, but he's my airport dog and he's always around. So, and they always ask about him on my plane spotting chronicles or whatever I'm doing. They always ask about him.
Right. Mm-hmm. Look, what I could have done for this interview, I could have just came and said, Jeff, go. He's got that much knowledge, and I just enjoy.
Or I could have interviewed you. I used to be a correspondent on Court TV, so I could interview you. Yeah, I used to do that. And I do some TV here in Las Vegas too. I think I had sent you that article that we did last week for Channel 13. So I'm branching out locally to be on local television as an aviation consultant. So that's been working good too.
Nice. What type things would you consult about?
Well, like we just had the issues in Washington, D.C., and the reporter wanted to compare and contrast that to Las Vegas. Could that happen here? What is the airspace here like? That sort of thing. Or like the missing pilot, talking on background so that they can report the story better, just explaining things. Because I have found, and I'm sure you have too, that people have a lack of knowledge about aviation. They have a lack of understanding about how it works. You know, like you said to me, we're going to file a flight plan. I'm like, no, we're not going to file a flight plan. It's been years since I filed a flight plan. And then, you know, knowing how that works in time of an issue where there's a story and the public wants to know, that's where I come in. And I help these reporters to get the right terminologies, to get the right photos, because often they'll have the wrong photos, and then to help them find the information so that they can make the public aware of things. Because as a pilot, there's nothing worse than listening to the news and they're getting it wrong and they're saying things wrong and they're drawing conclusions.
And it's so funny you said that, because when I first met you, we were talking about airline videos, and the thing you said, they know what they're talking about.
What they're talking about, and I don't always get it right. Sometimes I'll mess something up, but as you know from being a plane spotter, somebody always knows the answer when you're on your live, when you're doing your stuff. They'll always post in there, hey, this isn't the Dash 400, it's the Dash 900, or it's not the Max, it's whatever, and they'll correct you, and that's okay. We don't mind that, because nobody knows everything, and what we say in aviation, when you get your pilot's license, it's a license to learn. And I like that, because it really extends to everything we do in life. We're not perfect. We have to learn from our mistakes, and if you're not learning, you're not living.
And a little interesting tidbit, and then I'll close. I met a DFW spotter, and he was an aircraft mechanic, right? And I like the big planes. And every plane that he was saying he liked, it was a smaller plane, and I didn't get it, right? But because he's a mechanic, he works on the planes, he appreciates those particular planes because of how they work, how good they are, and how they function. And that was so fascinating to me to see that.
Yes, and 2 points about that. I think, for me, spotting is general aviation, it's commercial aviation, it's military aviation. But I'll spot anywhere, anytime. I love to spot all types of airplanes. I will say this, though. It's really funny, because when I post a helicopter, I lose followers. I don't understand why that is. When I post a helicopter, I lose followers. I don't know why that is. But the other thing is, and I'll ask you and see what you think about this. In my observation, most of the plane spotters in this country are West Coast. They're mostly West Coast. The big plane spotters, the ones that are out there with 100,000 followers, 200,000 followers, they're West Coast. And I don't know why that is. I don't know why it's kind of a West Coast, California, Arizona, Texas. I'll put Texas in there too. But the big plane spotters, the ones that have the most followings, are on the West Coast. So I think the West Coast has some of the best plane spotting. And I think your neighborhood, Imperial Hill, In-N-Out Burger, and my secret spot, the parking spot, don't go there. No one go to my plane. That's my favorite spot. Los Angeles is the best plane spotting in the entire world. It beats Heathrow. It beats everything.
Weather.
No, it's the locations. I mean,
that and weather.
You can't find a better spot than 2-4 right in In-N-Out Burger. You can't find a better spot than Imperial Hill. Because Imperial Hill, if it was a little further away,
Proudbird,
it wouldn't have worked,
Right.
And then when they're doing reverse ops, you've got those areas around Dockweiler, and you've got those areas back over on the north west side at Winchester. You can't beat it. And then if you're really inventive, you can go to the 20th floor at the Marriott, like I've done, and sit there in their lounge. That's where you go. And a few plane spotters that I know even have relationships with those other hotels right there on Century Boulevard, and they go to the top of those and plane spot. So, but Los Angeles has the best plane spotting. Las Vegas is okay, but they're hostile. Las Vegas hates plane spotters. The police there will give you tickets. They'll run you off the property. They actually hate plane spotters, which is stupid, because when I plane spot at Las Vegas, I get like 90,000 people watching.
Yes.
You think they would like that, but I guess they don't.
And the only reason I say weather is because you can get more volume, because you can spot year-round and you're not worried about it being cold. And spotters contact me from all over the world, and they mention the weather.
Yeah, but it's not just the weather, which is true. But you're getting airlines coming into Los Angeles that you do not see anywhere else. I mean, and you saw this, I have to look up the airlines when I'm there. I have to ask people, what livery is that? I don't recognize that livery. And it's like, that's a new one. I've never seen that one. Where's that one from? And so, and then because it's Los Angeles, all the Pan Pacific Airlines, they want to fly there, and they bring their best airplanes. When they have their newest liveries, they come into Los Angeles. So you are in heaven, my friend, and I will be over frequently, and we will hang out because that's where I love to plane spot.
Believe me, I know it. I just love it. That's how I got into spotting, because I did early retirement from UCLA, and I was sitting around doing nothing, scrolling on Instagram, and I came across this page, amazing_aeroplanes. And it just looked so beautiful. I'm like, wait a minute. I like photography. I like video. I like interviewing people. And I'm a few miles from one of the busiest airports in the world. What am I doing? That's how I got into spotting.
And don't forget the other airports that you have, because every airport in California has what's called, well, give it a shot. They have what's called display day. And in California, if you put your airplane on display and you document that and send it to the state, they'll cut your tax a little bit. So display day is a chance for the community to see airplanes out of the hangar. They also do it because they're writing down tail numbers to see who's paid taxes. But display day is a chance, like a mini fly-in or a mini air show, and you can figure out when the display days are because it's usually posted on the local airports' websites. And you have Torrance nearby. You've got, even if you go a little further, you've got Corona.
Long Beach?
Yeah, I mean, there's all those places where you can see general aviation.
Ontario?
Yeah, it's not that far.
John
But
Wayne?
here's the deal. Here's the challenge, my friend. You got to get your pilot's license. You got to go get your pilot's license. I mean, there's just no way around it. You can't be in this far and not be a pilot. You got to go get your pilot's license, my friend. You just do. That's my
The
challenge.
gauntlet has been laid
That's my
down.
challenge for you.
We're going to end with that. Jeff, I could talk to you all day. All day. We could just do this.
And we
Now,
will.
I really appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.